Good morning. It is Thursday, February 23rd, at about 9 a.m. in a very chilly LA during a blizzard warning. We're here with Mason Greer. Thank you so much for doing this, Mason. Thank you, thank
Yeah,
you,
thank
thank
you
you.
for having me. This is fun.
Very much appreciated. Um, Mason is an actor, film director, dubbing director, writer. Did I miss anything?
Those are the main points. Those are the main points. I'll take all of those. Those are the
Okay.
main ones.
I did what stalking I could on the internet before, just try to do my homework. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's all
yeah.
I found. Sorry, I didn't find any, terrible stories about you.
That's for the best, I think.
Okay. So Mason and I met on a dubbing project. Mason was the director. But let's step back and I always like to start with where you from, where you grew up and all those kinds of things. What was it like where you grew up?
Okay. Yeah, well, I grew up in the state of Iowa. I grew up in Iowa City specifically. If anybody knows the Hawkeyes, that's where that
Okay.
is.
Oh,
University
okay.
of Iowa hospitals, all that stuff. Yeah, I growing up, I actually thought, well, one, I wanted to write novels when I was a child. And so
Hmm.
I kind of moved forward with like doing that and published like my first novel in high school.
Wow,
So
okay.
that's kind of
That's
how I
great.
got started in the creative works. Yeah, yeah. And
And actually, before you go on, like
yeah.
it's pretty challenging to even publish a novel. So, tell us a little bit. Was it hard, doing your first novel in high school?
I mean, writing in general is difficult no matter what age you are. I have no idea how I had time at the time, given what I was doing all throughout
Hmm.
high school, but it was something that I was really passionate about. And so I just went through the process of self-publishing, which is a lot easier.
Okay.
And then some teachers at my school found out that I had written the book and then put it on an option to read for minority literature. So it got
Oh,
out there
okay.
kind of around my high school. So that's kind of how I got started in the creative works.
That's great. Uh-huh.
I didn't start getting into production until my senior year of high school.
Hmm.
My track coach, I was captain of the track team, and my track coach was my guidance counselor. He got
Hmm.
distracted talking to me about track and threw me in the wrong class, which was a film production class. And then I ended up taking to it, and I completely switched my major. I thought I was going to be a teacher and switched kind of like halfway through senior year and just went all in on film production. So,
And did you continue that through college?
film production, yes. So
Okay.
I went to college to study film, and it was in college because I was trying to become a better director and talking to actors that I started acting so I would understand the process for acting. And then
Hmm.
I just got involved in plays and community theater and improv that was traveling around the Midwest, and then that was game over. So that's also what I started doing because
That's
I
really
kind
great. So, um, is your favorite acting, or would you say your favorite is directing, or what would you say, or writing even?
I mean, they all take an equal part, I think, of me. And I think it's hard to pick. I think depending on what day you ask me is what day I'm going to feel like what,
Okay, I understand.
honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
If you catch me at VSI, I'm going to say I'm a director. You know what I
Okay.
mean? That's what I'm doing right now.
Right. Uh-huh.
But I just got off, I did a day and a half on a movie where I was acting. So it's like, if you'd asked
Oh,
me that
great.
day, I would have just said I was an actor.
Congrats. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now I'm really pushing towards the script that I've been working on for a little bit and kind of outlining. And now I'm now that I have a little bit of time right now, I'm like pushing towards getting at least 10 pages a day, like going
Hmm.
through with it.
Hmm.
So if you ask me this week, I'd probably say I was a writer. So it just really depends like what I
Of what
have
you're
going
doing. Yeah.
on. Mhm.
So, did you say where you went to college?
I went to the University of Northern Iowa, which was a very interesting
Okay.
experience. Yeah.
And how was that interesting, or what is was interesting about it for you?
Well, their film program was very new at the time, which
Uh-huh.
had benefits and setbacks on it. The benefits, well, the setbacks is, we're just not in a major institution like USC
Hmm.
or, a place that has all the money, all the resources to try out different things. So that could be a negative is you don't get to experience some of this stuff until you come out to Los Angeles and like actually get to work with bigger equipment. Benefits are you don't have those things. So how can you get away with telling a story without it? And
Hmm.
also because the program was so new, they were just like, yo, we're going to experiment and just bring in all these different filmmakers from all over the world to teach classes. So we had like this Hungarian filmmaker come in and teach advanced filmmaking with us, who basically acted like a studio head in Hungary.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
it's just like a
Okay.
very different like perspective on filmmaking and stuff. So it was, those were kind of some of the benefits. They were just willing to experiment because they were like, we don't have anybody that really does it out here. So let's try this guy. Let's try this woman. Let's try this. Let's just bring in all these people for a semester and like create this amalgamation of a program like
Oh,
through
that's
all these
interesting.
different experiences.
It is kind of funny. New programs are at least they're good at experimenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, after college, was LA the logical move, or did you go somewhere else first?
I went to LA. So I actually spent time in Los Angeles before I did the official move in 2016. So
Mm-hmm.
I graduated in 2016, but throughout college, I kept coming out to Los Angeles for different reasons. I had
Mm-hmm.
family out here that I could stay with. So after my freshman year, I came out for the first time just to visit, kind of go see different things, experience LA a little bit. After my sophomore year, I did a small job out here and got to work on a couple sets and then went back. After my junior year, then I got an internship at DreamWorks and got to like experience like the corporate side of
Okay, very
filmmaking.
cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I did that while getting involved in improv and acting classes out here, a writers group. I just try to pack my schedule as much as possible after my
Right.
junior year to really solidify, is LA the move? Because I really was going back and forth
Mm-hmm.
with whether I wanted a smaller area, and ended up being that Los Angeles made the most sense. So then I moved out after my senior year, but before I did that, I worked on a couple of documentaries that got me the money to come out to Los Angeles.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I got hired to do two different academic videos for the university
Uh-huh.
that they used for enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during a time where um, there was a lot of, especially on academic institutions, a lot of racial tension going on, and
Okay.
a lot of institutions were getting called out for not being the most inclusive in how they approach diversity on their campus. And so
Okay.
they really wanted to um, create a program and create materials that they could showcase to all students and try to get them on board with how things were going to be from now on.
Okay.
So I created two different institution videos for them, and then I worked on a documentary that was about a guy skateboarding across the state of Iowa during this event called RAGBRAI.
Okay.
For
Sounds
anybody
pretty
that doesn't
cool.
know what RAGBRAI is, yeah, RAGBRAI is like a event where people bike. They actually fly in from all over the world to bike across the state of Iowa, and it's basically like a large state bar crawl.
Oh, wow. Okay. That
Yeah,
sounds
so that's
fun. Yeah.
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
popular in my state. That's one of like the 7 things that Iowa's known for. It's RAGBRAI.
Okay.
So I did a documentary about a guy skateboarding, which is clearly much harder across the state of Iowa. So
I
between those
imagine,
three
yeah.
things, yeah, I got
I'm
the money
tempted
to
to
come out.
what the other six things are, but you know.
Yeah, maybe we'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll
And
see.
also see if I can remember all 6. But
So, was it culture shock coming to LA? It is for a lot of people, but you were familiar already, so pretty easy transition.
yeah, I mean, I have family all over the world too. Like I've been to so many different countries, so it's not like I just came from Iowa and then like out to
Uh-huh.
Los Angeles. Um, Weirdly, when people ask me about the culture shock, people are usually expecting me to talk about traffic or demographic makeups or something like that. Um, Honestly, coming from where I came from, the biggest difference for me moving from Iowa to Los Angeles was actually seeing people in certain jobs that you wouldn't see them in Iowa, which isn't specific enough. So what I mean is like there are jobs that are lower end jobs that people aren't expected to be able to support a family on. So like
Hmm.
for instance, like working at a movie theater, like
Yeah.
or working even like at a restaurant or at a bar or something like that. Like in the state of Iowa, at least when I was there, these were occupied by college students or
Uh-huh.
just high school students. I don't know how
Right.
high school students were doing some of these jobs. That's a whole other story I have.
Hey,
Child labor laws didn't seem to exist.
my
Uh,
friends did that. They were at the Taco
yeah.
Bell or the movie theater, and like we would occasionally sneak into the movie theater as
Mhm.
pulling your friend's card. So
Yeah. But then like coming out here, it was like there were a lot of people who are supporting like not just themselves, but like families doing this job. So I was like, oh, this is really
Interesting.
interesting
Yeah.
because
Uh-huh.
that's not how that would go back where I'm from. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
really is a good demonstration on why people were pushing for minimum wage going higher. You
Yeah.
know, it's like some people might not actually see that people are trying to support families off of this. They think it's a bunch of teenagers doing these jobs because where they live, that's what that is.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, that was probably the biggest culture shock for me, weirdly enough.
Well, I guess you have to in LA, there are
Hmm.
people trying to make a living and and it's populated enough that you can do that. Did you continue mostly doing acting? I mean, you did all three, I assume, but let's tell us about the acting side of when you got to LA and what you did and how that was like for you.
Yeah, I guess my path was probably not probably has been very different from other people.
Okay.
When I first jumped out, I jumped into kind of learning more. I felt like um, I ended up minoring in theater and I got to do a lot of projects on film because I was, a filmmaker and producer
Hmm.
out there. So I was able to get myself on enough stuff. They got myself a decent reel just coming out of school.
Hmm.
They got me some like small jobs and things, but I really had made a push towards the filmmaking part first, and it was really
Okay.
building a community in that area.
Okay.
Um, and interestingly enough, that kind of helped me in acting because my first not necessarily my first movie, but my first movie with any type of significance in it, I got because I knew the filmmakers as a filmmaker.
Hmm.
I was assistant directing a movie that was being financed by A24. It didn't get distributed by A24. It got financed by A24. But I knew the director because he was my DP on my first short that I did when I came out here, and then we just became really close.
Hmm.
And basically he was like, yeah, you should read for this part. I think you'd be good for it.
Hmm.
And I'm like, but I'm your assistant director. I don't know how that's gonna work. And he's like, don't worry about that. Just
Right.
read
Right.
for it. You're not gonna get it, but just read for it. So I said,
Hmm.
okay. So I did. And then and then I ended up getting it.
That's great.
And
That's really great. Yeah.
which is cool, but that was also like the assistant director was going to make more money than the actor. So I was like, oh, am I going to drop out on a lot of money to go do this? And he's like, no, you're going to do both. And I was like, oh, I'm going
Okay.
to do both. He was like, yeah, they did an Apocalypse Now. You'll be fine. So I was like, oh, okay, that's how that works.
That's
So
very
that
cool.
ended up being like
What
my
does
first
the
role.
apocalypse now mean?
Oh,
Exactly.
the assistant director is in one of the scenes in Apocalypse Now.
Oh, okay. Right.
So he's in
So,
kind of the inciting incident where Harrison Ford's in that scene and they're kind
uh-huh.
of sending him off to go kill Colonel whatever his name is.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
forgot his name already. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the assistant director is in that scene.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
great. So you got to do both.
yeah. So I got to do both of that production, and so that kind of led to other things, and then I've had different management teams because of this, and so on and so forth. But to make it short, yeah, I did kind of jump in and was kind of playing around with acting. I was
Hmm.
like taking classes and jumping on different short films that I could and stuff, and um, you know, whatever you could at the time. But it really was like my relationships and filmmaking that kind of got me my first things. They kind of
Hmm.
propelled me forward a little bit.
Okay. Since we're a little bit on how things happen, let's ask about how things happen in acting. Of course, obviously, the biggest challenge for almost all actors is finding your next job and moving forward. And
Mm.
how do you do that? Um, I assume you have agents and so forth. And is there how do you sort of go about looking for your next gig, if you will?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, currently, right now, I don't. So,
Okay, all right.
I'm actually in the process of talking to different teams and trying to figure out, a better fit for myself.
Okay.
Um, I've had a couple of different ones, and they've had positive things and negative things about those relationships. And right now, I'm just trying to find that good fit for me because a lot of the jobs that I've gotten is because of my direct relationships with filmmakers, and
Right.
so that
Uh-huh.
didn't change when I didn't
Uh-huh.
have a team.
Right.
There's obviously limitations on things that I can do, but I want that relationship to be there and to make sense. So that's actually the next step for myself in that realm. This movie I just did was because of me. You know what I mean?
Okay, that's
Um,
great.
the movie I did
Um,
before was because of me. So
Let me ask this then. You don't have to mention any teams, but just, we all go through this process. So what are some of the, you know, at a big level or, a general level, what are the pluses and minuses of some of these teams? And maybe you can talk about, are you looking for an agent and a manager or some combination, or what's the considerations, if you will, that you're thinking about when you're looking for representation?
yeah, I mean that's going to depend on the individual. I guess for myself, it was really knowing me and um, understanding me. I think also being multi-hyphenate, but I think it's a lot of people are multi-hyphenate, but like actors that are multi-hyphenate are usually like, but acting's number one. And so
Right.
I think it's hard for me because it's like I'm multi-hyphenate, but acting is right next to directing.
Okay.
So, and I think sometimes for teams that's a little hard for
Okay.
them. So I've had that issue before. I've also had um the issue where I'm what people might call racially ambiguous. There's a lot of
Oh,
different
okay.
things
Okay.
that I can play, which is cool. However, I do have boundaries that I don't want to cross in that
Okay.
area. And I've done it enough and played enough different cultures that I know what my boundary is. And so I've also had that issue where they don't want to accept my boundaries
Okay.
on that.
You don't have to. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more at all, or what those specifics are, or it's up to you, but
I mean, it's hard to even really know. I mean, the project kind of has to come across. It just has to be a conversation, you know. I mean,
right.
I've
Okay.
done okay, for instance, I did a project that was the whole film was completely in Arabic. I don't
Hmm.
speak Arabic.
Right. Right.
So I had to learn like 30 lines in Arabic to go do this movie, but they never said where the character was from. So
Okay.
he could be from Algeria, he could be from Jordan,
Hmm.
he could be from so many different places. But if they had said specifically the characters from Syria, I wouldn't have done it.
I
You know
see.
what I mean? So
Okay.
it's like that's kind of what the line is, you know. Other cultures, like if he was Dominican, I'd be like, okay, there's African descent in Dominican Republic, sure. Unless
Hmm.
it's like the story takes place in the Dominican Republic, then I'd be like, I don't know, that feels a little. There's probably somebody better for that, you know what I mean? So there's just conversations to be had,
Okay.
and that was my whole point about it, is like I just want to be open about these conversations. I don't want to have to say yes just because you sent it to me and you're getting frustrated that I don't want to culturally appropriate somebody else. So
Yeah, I think often representation can be sort of very sort of dogmatic about that. Like, we send it to you, you got to do it, right, kind of thing.
mhm.
So I can see that. So how are you usually cast? Let's ask that. Like, what kind of roles do you do? I can see that you could be racially ambiguous in a sense of like, or like let's call role ambiguous. You could be from lots of different. You could do lots of different things.
Yeah.
Is there a thing that you're most frequently cast as?
You saying racially?
It could be anything. Like, it could
Which
be
type?
from a region, or like what's your
Yeah.
type. Like, people always cast me as a yuppie of some kind. Like, I'm rarely the thug with the muscles on the back, like about to
Uh-huh.
beat someone up. It's never happens. So what's your usual casting, if you will, or most
Yeah.
common? Let's say most common casting.
Yeah. I'm trying to put my finger on what it is specifically. When it comes to region, that can vary. I've done a lot of different regions before.
Hmm.
Recently for myself, and this is probably because I've been doing more of a push for it, like I've really wanted to play Black American because that's what I am. And
Hmm.
so the last at least four roles were that specifically, like on
Okay.
purpose, written as
Hmm.
such,
Hmm.
which is cool. Because I think for a while it was like so many different cultures where I just felt at a certain point I just felt like I was appropriating. I'm like, I can't just be every brown person in the world. Like I can't.
Well, and it was funny. I also remember the period when the terrorist thing was a big deal, and like
Mhm.
everybody from everywhere played every terrorist there was. It was like,
Yep.
you could be Indian playing a Middle Eastern and all this kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and there were big names doing it too. So, that definitely goes on in Hollywood. Um, Let me ask about you mentioned that a lot of your work you get is through relationships. Are these just people you've met along the way, particularly as a filmmaker? And that's helped you with your relationships? If you don't mind me being that
Yeah.
specific about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's kind of a core group, but it's spread out like as I've kept going and
Hmm.
as my materials have gotten better and then gotten to audition for more things and like met more filmmakers. But there was a solid core group that I met immediately when I moved out here
Okay.
that worked on my first short. And then I worked on other projects with them. I was an assistant director for them on like 5 different movies.
Hmm.
I got to act for them. And then because of that role, one of the producers split off to do another movie. I got to do that movie with them.
Okay.
So um, it kind of started with that core group, and then it's kind of branched out a little bit from there as I've met
Uh-huh.
um, more and more filmmakers, and they've kind of moved up, and we've all tried to move up together. So that's kind of been the core of my relationship was
That's
that
really great.
starting group that I had. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to jump. Well, time is going by quickly, so I'm going to jump to the directing side.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, you've done a bunch of films on IMDb, I see. Do you want to talk about what that was like, what the challenges are, and are there things that are your passion that you're working on in that area?
Mhm. Yeah. Where do I start? What am I excited about? Well,
Okay.
currently I'm working on an animated commercial,
Okay.
which is going really well.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting really close to being done. We'll probably be done on March 1st is kind of the target goal for it. And it was kind of my first foray into doing animation, which is something that I've been wanting to do more of, which was also kind of um, part of the reason I wanted to jump into dubbing directing because there's direct links to voice directing and
Mm-hmm.
people work in video games and all these different things, and so that's kind of been a direction that I really want to branch off into
Mm-hmm.
is kind of that animation realm. So this commercial has been like my first time kind of jumping into that and seeing what the workflow is like. And I'm debating if I want my next project to be animated or not.
Okay.
It depends on a couple of different factors that I won't really get into, but uh, yeah, so that's been really
Well,
exciting.
let me ask
Yeah.
this. So I get the impression that, as a director or as a uh independent director, if you will,
Mhm.
a lot of it is, you have to come up with your ideas, you have to meet the people, you have to pitch the idea to them, and then, if they like it, then, budget and all these kinds of things. um I just imagine that being a very difficult process of one, being on your own doing this, if I've got the correct picture, and,
Mhm.
finding people that are interested in, what you might want to do, or where you have a mutual interest. So you want to talk about that process at all?
Yeah, yeah, I mean that's a lot of it. A lot of it is kind of pitching your own stuff to get money for outside of commercials, of course. Like
Right. Uh-huh.
commercials, you're just getting brought on to do their idea.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a couple projects that wasn't the case in the narrative realm. I did a small independent series that was coming up at a time where streaming, like there wasn't Paramount Plus, there wasn't HBO Max, there wasn't all this stuff. There was kind of just Netflix and Amazon Prime, and so everybody was trying to figure out what the next like independent platform was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people were doing rushes to try to make content for new platforms that were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a couple episodes of the series that was kind of competing with like I don't know, probably like networks like All Black TV,
Mm-hmm.
but they have like small independent streamers. They were trying to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was something that just like was brought to me, and then I worked on. I also did a promo movie that was similar
Okay.
to that. Music videos as well; those kind of get brought to you.
And how
But
much do you
outside
have?
of
I mean,
that, it is like pitching. Yeah.
well, how much is it just pitching an idea versus like, like a company where you have to pitch the idea, but you have to present a budget and all this kind of stuff. Like, how complete is the? I assume it ranges from, here's an idea, and whoever works with you or finances it, sort of has the team and puts that together, versus you having a team that, maybe you have a producer and a budget person, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
What's the range on that kind of stuff? How necessary is it to, and how complete does the presentation have to be, if you will?
Well, yeah, it depends who's coming to who with the project. So if
Right.
people are coming to me wanting me to work on a project, they're the ones that have all of that together.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's those are the questions I'm going to ask. Like the same,
Right.
if I brought a project to somebody else, they would ask, okay, what's the budget? What's your
Right.
time frame? Who
Right.
your key crew members? Like all this stuff. It would be the same if somebody brought a project to me. I'd be like, okay, what is your budget? What's your time frame? Who's
Right.
already locked into this project? So it just depends who's bringing it to who. If I'm bringing it to somebody, then absolutely, those are the things that I have to present and get together first. And usually, depending on the size of the project, if it's a smaller project, like I can do it myself, like working as a
Uh-huh.
line producer. If it's a bigger project, like a feature film, I'd have to go to a line producer and
Right.
work that stuff out beforehand to have all those materials together, which is something that I'm going to be working on very, very soon.
Still a bear of a project, the thing to do, right? To have put all of that together, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the dubbing side. How did you get into that? And how are you finding it?
Yeah, I got into it because I knew or had a loose connection to Carrie Caranan.
Okay,
Yeah, who does a lot of directing at
I've met her.
VSI.
Yeah, I, I've worked for
Yeah.
her once. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And so she was just like, "Hey, I don't know if you'd be interested in this or not. It's they're it's not new, but they're kind of bringing in new people because it's starting to take more traction and there are more jobs out there, so they're trying to train more people to do it. I know you've worked in these other realms. Maybe you'd want to try it." So I sat in with her at Deluxe a couple of times to kind of get a sense of what the job was like. Still
Hmm.
wasn't sure just by watching it, really how if I would like it or not. So she's like, "Hey, uh, this woman named Madeline at VSI is going to be putting a director's program together. Um, you should talk to her about like going through it." So I did, sat in with a bunch of people, and then at a certain point, it's like you just got to do one
Okay,
to
yeah.
even see if you like it. So they gave me my first movie last year.
Oh, that's
Uh,
great. Yeah.
yeah,
And so are the I mean the in terms of it's really, I guess VSI does a lot of for Netflix, right? So it's really Netflix VSI. Are there any other big companies out there that are like what are the other big companies doing this or that you might work with?
yeah. So VSI works. I mean, a lot of their stuff is Netflix, and everything I've done through them is Netflix. But they
Hmm.
do work for Showtime, HBO Max,
Right.
Disney, other companies too. There are a lot of other companies out there: Post Haste, Roundabout, Deluxe,
Hmm.
Vox, I guess, um, Dubbing Brothers.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a long list of
Right.
people out there as well. But actually, I've only worked for VSI. So I just
Okay.
did the project we worked on together was my third project at VSI.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
And then I started my fourth, and then I'm doing my fifth in April.
Oh, excellent. That's
Yeah.
great. So, what was that transition like? Was there a bunch of things you had to learn? Um, these kinds of things. Was it difficult? Was it fun? What were the challenges?
It was fun. There's a learning curve around because directing a lot of is just like managing things that are happening at once and kind of crafting behavior over time when it comes to the performance aspect, and just the workflow of how to work with actors in that space is
Uh-huh.
slightly different.
Uh-huh.
The end result I feel is the same. You're trying to be as specific as you can and give
Uh-huh.
them the actor like intention of what to do
Uh-huh.
in lines, but it's different in the sense of like we're directing and editing at the same time. So I have to know
Right.
what part of what take I'm keeping on the keeper track and what we're getting rid of and all of that stuff. And so there's a different way of managing these things in your head and managing the people in the room that I
Right.
found versus doing it on set. The end result ends up being the same.
Mm-hmm.
And once I figured it out, I found that I actually don't direct that much differently
Mm-hmm.
in dubbing that I do in live action. The only difference in dubbing is, I'm sorry, but these decisions are already made for us. You're gonna have to do this thing. So how can I get you to do that very specific thing instead of giving you more freedom on live action
Right. Right.
because you don't have to match anything?
And you're saying decisions made because you're just matching what's on screen, right?
Yeah, and that's what makes it, I think, fun and a lot easier. Is like you're not in there making decisions. You just have to figure out how to match that decision and try to bring the best performances out of people. But I mean, it's crafting behavior over time, but it's different because the decision isn't up to you.
Right.
So
Uh-huh.
you just have to analyze what is already there and then craft that going through and how to explain that to the actor without over explaining it, you know.
Always a dangerous thing, over explaining to an actor.
Yes, it is.
Um, so we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. So what do you like to do for fun?
Oh, what do I like to do for
Oh
nothing
no,
now that it's
tell me you're
cold?
an art workaholic. Okay.
Well, nothing now that it's all cold outside. Everything I
I
like to
know.
do is outside.
It's kind of hard. I was like looking over because I think it's raining right now. So
Is it?
um uh cool. So do you work a lot? Are you a bit of a workaholic? A lot of people are.
Probably. I very much have to plan out and carve out just free time for myself, because the hard part is like when you also really enjoy what you do, sometimes you forget that it still is work.
Yeah, yeah.
Through this process of like writing a new script, I'm just like, well, I love this and I'm so excited to do it every day, but it is work, and I have to remember that you do have to go do something. Just because you're enjoying this doesn't mean
Right.
that it's relaxing. So I'm very much a person that needs to be outside, and so I'm trying to, but it's hard when it's cold, and so I'm like
Oh,
trying to craft more time for that. But
totally.
it's
My excuse for getting outside is I'm a photographer. I'm like, I can't shoot anything. It's too wet. It's like wet and dark. I can't take up any pictures.
yeah.
Okay, here's a random question out of left field. Do you know your MBTI, which is the Myers-Briggs? Always a fun little thing. You may not, so
No,
it doesn't matter.
no, I don't.
Okay. MBTI is a personality index, and
Okay.
there are 4 measures, and they're not what they sound like. It's actually kind of fun if you're into it. So one is introvert, extrovert, and it's not like are you quiet or not. It's where you get your energy from. Some
Mhm.
people like to be get their energy, are happier around people. Some people like I go to a party and then I need to go home and recover or whatever it is. So, but I'm actually a bit of a borderline E, which is extrovert. NS is are you a big picture thinker or a more detailed person? Thinking feeling is pretty straightforward. Are you a thinker or are you more, based on emotion? And then perceiver
Mhm.
judger, which I always find interesting because judger is not like judgmental. It's like people like to get things done. So when you meet someone who says, okay, we're gonna be there at 8, and then like 9:30, we're gonna do this, and then 10:30, we're gonna do this, and they're on time, that's
Mhm.
J. And if I'm
Okay.
late, that's me. I'm a P. So so
Okay.
that's a fun thing to do. Let's do this. If people want to find out more about you, where should they go? What are your you know, what's the best way to for people to find out about Mason Greer?
Um, the easiest way, especially for like my filmmaking stuff, is my company website is thickboyproductions.com. That's thick with
Okay.
two C's.
Oh,
That's
cool. Okay.
important.
Mm-hmm.
Thick with two C's, thickboyproduction.com. You can view the work that's at least public there. I will have a new film coming out this year. We
Excellent.
just
Okay.
finished very recently. And it's gonna do like festival circuit and all that stuff. Its first premiere is actually gonna be back home in my home state.
Uh-huh.
So that'll be its first premiere will be out there. But at the bottom of my website, you can sign up for the newsletter, and that'll keep you up to date on all the things I have going on, not just for filmmaking. So
Okay, great.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much. We're getting some random sounds in the background, so I apologize for that.
it's all good.
But that was great. That was great to get to know you a little bit better, find out more about all the things you do other than
Yeah,
just, sitting in a booth and
in Sao Paulo. Yeah,
there you go. So thank you so much. It was great. We'll sign off here. Have a great day.
absolutely. You too.
All right, take care.
Take care.